Ambassadors. It's Paul Lavoie, Connecticut's Chief Manufacturing Officer, and welcome to the State of Manufacturing webinar series. Very excited today. I'm here with Beatrice Gutierrez and Mike Stimpson from Constep. Constep is Connecticut's Manufacturing Extension Partnership, a public-private partnership from NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology of the U.S. Department of Commerce. Welcome, Beatrice and Mike.
Thank you for having us.
Nice to be here.
So, Beatrice and Mike, please tell our ambassadors about your background and your experience, and then please tell us about Constep. Tell us about your mission, your work, and most importantly, your impacts.
So thank you very much, Paul, and so happy to be here. I am originally from Colombia. I came to the United States to study. I studied electrical engineering in Milwaukee, Marquette University, and later went to the University of Chicago, and came to Connecticut with GE. And what was supposed to be a transfer became 25 years. So I love it in Connecticut. I have worked for the state of Connecticut in economic development. And in the last 2 years, I work for Comsted. I run Comsted. The mission of our company is very, very important to us because it focuses on trying to really help manufacturers, small and medium manufacturers, grow in Connecticut. And as part of that, grow in the state. And in the United States. We work with experts in different areas to provide those resources to those companies. And, you know, it just works with really, really nice people and very talented people.
Mike?
So I'm actually originally from New York, from upstate New York. Been here in Connecticut about 27 years. Have 30 plus years or so experience both in manufacturing and working with manufacturers. My degree is actually international relations, but I have a pretty extensive engineering background also. And, really the mission of Constep, as B said, can be summarized is we're here to strengthen and empower manufacturing. We do that through our team of subject matter experts, both in-house and through a lot of partnerships throughout the state, like the CMO, CCAT, and others. And our whole goal is to help manufacturing thrive in Connecticut.
So, Beatrice, you're the president and CEO of Constep,
yes,
correct? And Mike,
correct.
What's your role?
I'm the director of strategic engagement and process. I oversee delivery of service and business operations.
Excellent. Okay, great. So, for the ambassadors, what would that mean for an ambassador? So, if an ambassador is going to go out and talk to our manufacturers about Constep, and they want to connect them to Mike Stimpson, give it more like a practical approach to that.
The team of consultants, I oversee their operations. We also have a team of regional managers who work directly with the companies to help understand their initial needs and then bring in some of the team members who could help solve those problems. And we do that in a really holistic way. So we look at the entire company, try to roadmap paths for improvement for them. And so that first contact is with those regional managers who are out in the field working with clients every day.
And I will say also what is so important for our ambassadors to know is that because of our expertise, both at the state and federal level, we become a central point for them to actually look for resources. So when we're going to these customers, for most of our partners, we are one of those entities that does have, like Michael said, regional managers that are at the customer and for the customer. So once they're there, they're not only looking to connect them with our resources, but to connect them with the other resources in the ecosystem that may be helpful.
So how long has Constep been in Connecticut?
We've been here since the 80s, and
Okay.
we were created by the University of Connecticut together with the Department of Economic Development. Then we transitioned into being a 501c3, or a non-for-profit, funded partially by federal and state funds. And since then, we have held the MEP Center for Connecticut. So we're very proud that consistently, 40 years almost, we've been doing this type of work.
Now, there are MEPs in every state, including Puerto Rico, right? So
That
there are
is
51 manufacturing extension partnerships.
51.
Yes. So you have an extensive network of manufacturer experts that we can tap into here in the state.
Absolutely. And another piece to that, so each state has their own expertise based on their market. So that is an important thing. For Connecticut, one of the things we're very, very proud, outside from our continuous improvement, is cybersecurity. That's an area where we are very, very strong for the whole Northeast. But what's also important is because of this program being part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, we have also access to both the MEP labs, which are very important, and also the institutes, which, as some of the ambassadors may or may not know, are centers of excellence that are funded partially by federal funds to develop particular technologies. So we have the opportunity to work directly with those and also with our academic institutions in the state or across. Right now, for example, we have a program with Purdue, with one of our centers that is located at Purdue University, working together on bringing new capabilities into the system.
Yeah.
So, as a follow-up to all of this, how do you measure success at Constep? How do you measure impact?
So every one of our projects is surveyed by a third party who will work with the company that we worked with directly and essentially determine what kind of economic impact our services had. That would be anything from, did we help them increase their sales? Did we help them either retain or increase their employment? Cost savings, investments. That gets all rolled up and gets reported quarterly, and we essentially get a scorecard that says how well we did in each of those elements. We've had a really good record on that scorecard, and just as importantly, all of that information is rolled up on a national level, and again, it actually gets reported to Congress, who is the funding mechanism for this program. So this is something that gets reevaluated every year, and it's based on true economic impact that we've had with our clients.
And we're very proud to say that as a network, our return of investment to the taxpayer, the federal taxpayer, is 14.6 for each dollar invested in the program.
So for every dollar that the government's investing in the MEP network,
Correct.
That's returning $14.60
Yes.
back into the economy.
That's correct.
All right, ambassadors, you got that, right? Every dollar, if I give you $1, Constep's going to give you $14.60. So let's give them a lot of dollars, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And also, it's your taxes at work.
That's right.
This is one of the ways you do get your taxes back.
Good. We'll come back to impacts because we're going to talk about some of the programs that you're now managing that will be really important for our ambassadors to make sure that they're amplifying out there. And when they're talking to manufacturers, they should be representing these programs. And one of those programs is a signature program that we launched on February 2nd. And that is a program that's supported by the Manufacturing Innovation Fund. And the Manufacturing Innovation Fund board has selected Constep to roll this out. And that's the Connex supply chain platform. So please tell our ambassadors about Connex, tell them why it's important, what the benefits are for manufacturers, and more importantly, how our ambassadors can encourage manufacturers to sign up for the Connex platform.
Sure. So Connex is it's an online platform that, as its name implies, it connects manufacturers to others within the state and nationally. It's and you asked the question about how the importance of it during the COVID-19 pandemic. Just real quick story. We worked with the CMO and with others to try to find ways that manufacturers could pivot their operations to help support the efforts to provide PPE, face masks, gowns, etc. For instance, we had a company who had very good commercial sewing capabilities. They wanted to get into the fight. They wanted to provide protective gowns to first responders at no cost, by the way. The issue was they couldn't find suppliers for material, and they couldn't find others to basically partner with to execute that. We ended up spending hours just combing through our database, making phone calls, setting up a website to try to match, people who want to help to suppliers. Had we had Connex at that point, that effort would have been so much easier and even more effective. I mean, it's a huge success story of how this state, the manufacturers in this state really rallied and to support the community around PPE. Connex would have made that so much more effective because that's what it does. It matches suppliers and the people who need those elements. So, as you mentioned, it's funded by the MIF fund. it's essentially a way for companies to be seen and to see others in the supply chain. So, for instance, if I have a need for a certain, let's just say it's a part or the capability to make a part, they can a company could go into the system and put out exactly what it needs, what they need, hit the button, it will go out to everybody who meets that criteria. Actually, we'll send them a request for a quote. The other thing that it really helps them do is to better understand the security and the resilience of their supply chain. So it gives them a risk assessment as to what their supply base looks like. Are they single sourced in certain areas? Are things in politically perhaps unstable areas? So they can begin to think about the resiliency of their suppliers. Ultimately, what it does is to essentially, provide for a stronger supply chain throughout the state.
Great. So for a manufacturer, right, they're going to be able to build a profile. They'll put their capabilities and capacity in this database. Is that, and then they'll be able to find each other in a much easier way, in a much easier format to be able to do that, to be able to do business together.
And I think what's important too is as part of the efforts of the federal government and their Biden administration, NIST has been charged to put together, our program, NIST MEP, to put together a national database. Connex has been so far the preferred supplier of that platform. So when we're trying to work with this, we're not only thinking Connecticut, we're thinking the US, the whole US. And that gives us the opportunity to really leverage resources at a national level on behalf of the customer.
Yeah, so and it does have the national reach as well as the local focus, right? Mm-hmm. So, we've often heard you say, look, if we're going to produce it here in Connecticut, let's source it here in Connecticut. It does shorten their supply chains. It lowers their transportation costs. And, that's really on the cost side and the supply chain side. From the growth side, it actually has a double whammy here, if you will. On the growth side, it makes these suppliers be seen. So companies, the large OEMs and prime contractors in the state can find these companies. That's what the other challenge. I mean, this is on both sides of the equation. It's often very difficult for these larger companies to find sources of supply because they're trying to diversify. So by being in the system, by having a really good sound profile set up in the system, these smaller manufacturers can be seen, can be contacted, and can participate in the supply chains throughout the state.
So I guess for manufacturers that have maybe one business development person or no business development staff at all, this could be their best business development resource, right?
Huge.
Going to connect them with opportunities.
Yeah. And one thing that we want to do, though, as part of our partnership with your office, is to really look at Connex as the beginning of a stronger approach to how do we help our supply chains get resources. The way we build it and the way you establish it requires a person, an actual person helping out. So I just want to make sure the ambassadors know this is not just a database.
Yes.
It has a person with experience helping them out.
Who is that person? Tell all
Bernice Zampano. Bernice Zampano with a lot of experience at the Department of Labor.
Yes, Bernice is
and
doing
she's
it.
phenomenal.
Yes, she's doing great. So this is free to all Connecticut manufacturers.
Correct.
That's right.
And there's also a national platform that's available to manufacturers as well. So how many states are currently on the Connex platform, and what's Connex's plan for growth?
So there are approximately 14 states on it today, with several more in the pipeline. So Connex's plan for growth is to expand, again, primarily through the MEP centers, because as you mentioned before, there are 51 centers throughout the country, and as B mentioned, we have a mandate from the Biden administration to establish a nationwide database. And we've all looked at this particular platform and has found that it is, one of the best out there, to be quite honest. So the growth will be, as more states come online, manufacturers will have the opportunity to both be seen, not just within the state, but throughout nationwide, as well as to look for sources of supply that may not be available here, either whether that be raw materials or component parts.
And right now, this is for manufacturers
Correct.
only, right? And
Correct.
we're looking at So what are we looking to expand it to? We're looking to expand it to some other folks as well?
We'll see. But no, we will. But originally, the piece that I want to highlight is when we went through the pandemic, we didn't know where our manufacturers were. This is going to provide us on a different level, outside from helping the manufacturers, data that will help us identify gaps. And in some cases, that will be other industries, because we will have manufacturers looking for specific things, but we also will be gathering feedback on other opportunities. So keep your eyes open for the next part.
So talk about how the launch has gone for this program. So again, we launched it on February 2nd. So talk about from where we are today on how this is going and some of the feedback you may be getting from Connex as to how well Constep is managing the launch of this program.
So yeah, we're really proud of this, and we really have to give a shout out to Bernice. She has been working diligently to get this done.
Absolutely.
So we've been in operation about 5 weeks now in the program. There's roughly 4,300 manufacturers in the state. So far, we have 240 of them already signed up with profiles. There have been 30 matches already made in the first 5 weeks of the program's existence in the state. Just to give not that we're competitive, but just to give you an example, Florida launched this a couple of years ago. They have 12,000 manufacturers, and it took them over 9 months to get to the level that we at. So we are definitely punching above our weight on this one.
So we can do in 5 weeks what it takes the state of Florida to do in 9 months.
Exactly.
I just wanted to highlight that. That's all. So that's great. That's great news. And I think the Connex platform is going to be one of the single best decisions that we've made here in Connecticut as we continue to braid all of our manufacturers together, as we continue to shorten supply chains. And ambassadors, reach out to Bernice. If you have any manufacturers that are not on the Connex platform, connect them with Bernice and Constep's at the Constep office, so that Bernice is able to walk them through and to be able to make sure that they're taking participation in Connex. So let's move on to another subject. So as you both know, innovation is a very, very important platform of my office. So Connecticut's manufacturing strategic plan is built on a platform of innovation. So please tell our ambassadors how they can go on this journey of innovation and the role that Constep is going to play in the implementation of Industry 4.0 technologies.
So I think what's really, really interesting about this piece is we have in Connecticut a very wide example of companies, from very, very small ones, 5 people, to very, very large ones. But the majority of them are small and medium. Our large OEMs, very strong chains, are moving into this I 4.0. They're moving into automation. And for those of you that don't know what this is, basically think you have devices connected to the cloud and they're talking to each other in different ways. So as you're moving into that, the challenge that we have is we need to look for ways, effective ways, to take those small companies through this journey and to be able to provide them tools to do so. Our legislator, very aware of this challenge, asked both CCAT, Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, which you'll learn more about later, and us to co-chair a report that brought industry, academia, and us together to try to really figure out what was going to be required to do so. And some of the things that came out from these recommendations of 1.5 years of work is, first of all, it has to do with workforce. You need to be able to train people and to have people in the state, attract people that can implement these technologies. And our schools don't produce enough people today to do so. On the other side of that challenge is we are not able to recruit enough workforce in the state. So even if everybody today in the state went into working today, we don't have enough people to work these systems. So it is about bringing people that are technically trained, and it's also about understanding that we need technology to bring some processes and keep going and keep growing. So it's both. So that's the first thing: workforce development, workforce attraction, and then the understanding that in many cases we're going with technology. The other part is, as we do this, there's going to be a significant capital investment required for these companies. And some companies cannot afford to do that. So how do we create programs in different options that can help the right technology for the right company? And that's very important. And that goes a lot to where we come into, which goes with We want to make sure companies, we meet them where they are. If you don't even have, let's say, a relay or a sensor, it's going to be very hard to jump to total innovation in virtual reality, etc. But what we can do is understand what are those critical operations where we can make a difference and advise the customer with it. So that's where our job as CompStat is. We look at assessing the customer. We sit with the customer, we do, we go through a process called discovery, and then we use our assessments to really measure where will we really make an investment that makes sense for that customer. And then once we do so and identify viable technologies and vendors, then we'll bring those partners that can do so. How do we work with our partners like CCAT? They are able to demonstrate the technology and get the customer comfortable and also advise. So if you haven't had a chance to see the, let's say, the technology park, the Walt Disney for engineers, go to CCAT and check it out because you'll get a lot of technology there. But from our perspective, is the right technology for the right customer at the right price. And that's basically where we see ourselves.
So ambassadors, what that really translates is Constep has regional managers that are out there meeting with manufacturers on a regular basis. When they go out there, they can introduce them the journey, the Industry 4.0 journey. Constep will bring people in to do the assessment so that we can understand what the gap analysis is, right? So once we understand what that gap is, we then can work with manufacturers to be able to say, where are you going to get the most impact from implementing some of these Industry 4.0 technologies? So Mike, what are some of those Industry 4.0 technologies that manufacturers would be able to implement in their operations?
Sure. So they could take many different forms, and Industry 4.0 is a very wide-ranging term. So it is really important to understand and to kind of meet the customer where they are to see what's going to be the most effective. So it could be automation. It could be the establishment of robots or cobots, collaborative robots. What a lot of people really need is data automation. It may not be a physical thing, but it's to automate their data, to have connectivity between machines, which is a huge element of Industry 4.0. So one of the things we found, for instance, is we mentioned the assessments that we do. Of the assessments we've done so far, there have been two really things that were pointed out. One is the importance of tying your technology strategy to your overall strategy. It supports your business, not the other way around, right? The second biggest thing that we found with small and medium-sized manufacturers, and this is actually benchmarked across the world, is that connectivity piece, the able to connect machines to each other on the shop floor and within the enterprise. So a lot of what we see is that we do have resources ourselves to help people with that, and we partner with others on both the connectivity, the automation, and other elements of it.
And one thing that I really want to highlight, because I think this is at the core of this transformation, is we need to really, and we are, after the first piece of our work, we have realized that leadership engagement is critical.
That's huge.
So, beyond any technology, we need to engage leaders into the process. One of the things that comes back and forth is we are today known for continuous improvement. The worst thing you can do is to put automation in a bad process. So at the end of this engagement is both the buy-in from the leadership to make a transition, the tools to do change acceleration process, CAP, and then the last part is to make sure that your processes are strong before they get automated. So it all ties together. It's not, we're not, and I want to convey that when you talk to customers, we're not going into a new phase. We're just building into what we already created as a foundation.
Yeah. And so what's really important, too, for the small to medium-sized manufacturers is the idea of what path they need to take, right? Because they are all starting at slightly different areas. So what is the appropriate pathway and roadmap for that? And that's what we could help them do, to go in and establish your start point, work with them to figure out what their end point wants to be, and then come up with the concrete steps as to how to get there. That ends up being one of the biggest challenges. And once they do that, they can execute. They know how to do that.
Sure.
But it's knowing what that path needs to be is where the challenge often is.
Yeah, I can imagine that for a small to medium-sized manufacturer, when you say things like Industry 4.0 or digital transformation or robotics and cobots and additive manufacturing, you can throw in all these big data and data. They're going to get all a little overwhelmed. And I think the idea of sitting down with them, assessing where they are, understanding, coming to them and saying, meeting them where they are and saying, listen, here's 2 or 3 things that you can do, and helping them build that roadmap, and then really, almost concierging them through that process, right? So, ambassadors, it's important to know when you're talking to manufacturers, and if you're talking about Industry 4.0, that you're going to want to connect them with the folks at Constep and tell them, especially if they get a little bit overwhelmed with them, to tell them that we've got it covered. We've got Constep here that's going to be able to take them through that Industry 4.0 experience, and it really is to help make their business much more resilient, right? We're here talking about how we bring resiliency into the supply chain. So there's one other area I want to touch upon briefly with you as well, and that's around cybersecurity. And then we know that in the defense sector, that folks have to get their cyber maturity model certification, so CMMC. So talk a little bit about why cybersecurity is important, why protecting the digital assets is more crucial today and will continue to be as we move forward in the future.
So what I will say, though, is if you think about today, all our data is in the cloud somewhere, it's digital. And when you're thinking about manufacturing automation, it's all about data. We just spent a lot of time talking about I 4.0, and the key of I 4.0 is data. Today, that data is not only payroll, it can have your IP, it can have your designs, it can have your tolerances. So if someone takes your data, you may not be able to build whatever you built to sell to your customers, or you may lose your customers' information, which is the other part of that. So it can put you out of business. So we are required by our mission to look for ways to help customers with that. We have expertise, not only on the standard, but we can work really closely with the customer, helping them find, work into their gaps, understanding where the vulnerabilities are, and in some cases, bringing others to work with them to make sure that they're secure. Big companies, really, you see today, these companies get, sued for losing data. What we did in Connecticut in cooperation with CBIA in this case, which was very interesting, was we were able to provide technical data, Comsted, to support basically a shield for companies that have done the right thing. So if you're a small company in Connecticut, you have the right thing, do the right things to try to protect your data and your customers' data, and you still get hacked, you have no liability. And that's because we can provide those tools. So that was something that we did 2 years ago, and it's very important. And that's one thing with Comsted. We are your partners, and we work with all entities, including the state, to really identify those areas where the customer can be vulnerable. But in the tactical matter, we have experts that will come, help you out, do your assessment, and identify, are you complying with the standard? Now, I know the rumor is, well, we had to comply, and now we don't have to comply, and maybe in the future we'll have to comply, and I'm going to put it for later. But this is not OSHA. Think about this. This is not ISO 9000 where we were walking around and marking yellow lines. This is your business. It's as serious as if someone came inside your business and stole your computers and your assets. So what I would like to remind people, this is not waiting for the inspector to see if you're compliant. This is someone coming in your house and taking your data. So the priority, even if it's not put on us, it should be put on yourself.
The other thing I'd like to add to that, in addition to protecting your own individual business, is the protection of the supply chain itself.
Absolutely.
And the reason why companies within the defense industrial base, or the DIB, is going to be required to become compliant to CMMC is because if a male actor is trying to get into somebody like a Pratt & Whitney, they're not going to go after Pratt & Whitney. They've got the resources. They've got the ability to protect themselves. What they do is they go into the lower tiers of the supply chain. And there have been examples of this in other parts of the country A couple of years ago, the utilities, one of the water utilities out in Washington State, was being brought down. And the way they did that was to go in through a lower tier supplier and work their way up. So that's why it's so important for the companies within the supply chain, to take this seriously and not wait until it's forced upon them. The other reason why they shouldn't wait is that this is a path. This is not something that you can go in and in a few months become compliant. So generally the process is you do a gap analysis against a reputable standard. In the case of the Department of Defense, that's NIST 800-171. A lot of companies have heard of that. You identify your gaps. You put together basically a plan of action with milestones to close those gaps. You have to have a system security plan. You have to have policies and procedures. You have to start executing on all this. That takes time. So companies, the message we'd like to get out is they've got to start now. And we can help them through that whole process. We've done dozens of these type of analysis and implementations with companies. The other thing, two other points I'd like to quickly make is, we were just talking about Industry 4.0. And if you remember, I said connectivity, machines within the enterprises. That makes the cybersecurity thing equally important. It has to happen at the same time as the Industry 4.0 is happening. Right. The second thing is leadership. This is not the province of IT. This is not the province of quality. This is the province of the company leadership that has to take it seriously and provide the resources to make this happen right. It's got to be part of their strategy.
And at some point, if you don't do it, you won't be in business.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So right. I was at a submarine supplier conference, and somebody, a cybersecurity expert, got up and said that they did a survey, and 70% of manufacturers said they had not been subject of a cybersecurity attack. To which this expert said that means 70% were attacked and didn't know they were attacked.
Exactly.
So they've all been attacked. So it's very, very important. So make sure that we're locking down the supply chain as it relates to cyber, and there is money for that. That's correct. Well, Mike and Beatrice, thank you so much for joining me on the State of Manufacturing webinar series. Constep is a very important partner in the Connecticut manufacturing ecosystem, so we appreciate all that you do to help support manufacturing. And ambassadors, thank you for listening today. As you interact with our manufacturing community, please let them know about Constep and how Constep continues to provide outstanding support for our manufacturing community. Thank you, and make it a great day today.